So once again, let's remind ourselves what the motivation is for this series of episodes about my career through Cambodia, Kuwait, Qatar, and then seeking explanations in London. Let me record this testimony from Fatima.
This is what war does to people. Take your inner peace away. Turn you to kind of a robot, if I can say. Sometimes you have no emotions, no feelings. Sometimes you are a ball of anger. Sometimes you feel like a ghost, that nobody sees you, nobody cares about you, nobody knows what is happening to you, and nobody asks, how are you doing?
So this is a refugee from the latest foreign intervention in Afghanistan when the US occupation ended. Let's get some context there, or a contrast, via the book Free the Map, another source of motivation for this series of episodes by Henk van Houten. A couple of quotes. Put differently, a global aristocracy determined by birth is mirrored by a global underclass whom they lock in from afar while exploiting their labor and resources. In practice, this implies that a majority of the world's population is territorially trapped in state cages, or paper prisons in quotes, sentenced by an iniquitous lottery of birth. Paradoxically, the privileged nations of this neo-feudal system, this global apartheid, promote a dominant ideology of liberalism that praises the universal human rights on which the same international system is supposed to be built. Yet the liberal notion of universalism seems to imply a freedom and equality that apply only to people who are lucky enough to be born with the right passport. Continuing on, overall, these borderline maps, such as that behind me here, create a visual distortion of power relations that hide a crucial fact. Many of the countries represented as fragile, unfree, or corrupt are in such dire state because the roguish foreign policies of more powerful countries have contributed in a sustained manner to put them in this precarious condition. So that's what this exploration is across these countries, is seeking verification of these claims by Henk about seeking evidence of robust and significant interventions from outside of countries that determine life in a significant way inside these countries. Enabling, endorsing this exploration and how I am speaking up in this series of episodes against some powerful figures in our industry, especially the global engineering design industry, and some especially powerful large global firms, I find J.D. Vance. So let's listen to what he has to say.
To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership.
All right, so as I've said before, I'm taking J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the free world, at his word, in his quote, actually, in turn, of John Paul II, that our supposedly mature, robust, strong, what can I say, and humane leaders will permit the likes of me speaking up based on the evidence I've accumulated in a career basically since 2011 across some of the world's most fractured regions. Prompted, speaking of humanity, by this, what can I say, searing testimony of a refugee, Fatima. This woman who is marked, I hope not for life, but I wouldn't blame her if she was, marked by the trauma of war. I haven't directly been exposed to war, but I have certainly been through some countries which are still marked very significantly by war. All right, so again, continuing, I guess, a summary or, asking where we've gotten to. So I actually put together a short YouTube video somehow summarizing the points I'm kind of making. And the resolution of this is terrible. Oh, well, perhaps it will improve. So what have we got on the left? It is the data set of bombings by the US and its allies in the Vietnam War. And you will see that those bombs don't only fall in Vietnam. They are now beginning to fall in Cambodia. And later on in the animation, the bombs only fall in Cambodia for a sustained period. And it's all over the country. Now, what I am encouraging you to consider is how to interpret these bombs via a humanization framework on the right. I'm going to bring the animation back a bit. Let's keep going. So we have, for example, human uniqueness to animalistic dehumanization. There we go. There are the bombs dropping in Cambodia on the right. On the very right, we have maturity and childlikeness. I put it to you that it's going to be easier to bomb a country when you consider them as being childlike, irrational or instinct-driven, amoral or lacking self-restraint, being coarse and lacking culture. Likewise, looking at the bottom continuum, I put it to you that it'll be easier to bomb a country when you perceive the population to be somehow inert as opposed to emotionally responsive, cold, rigid, passive, and having a view of fungibility as opposed to agency and individuality, and where you perceive the population, rather than having depth, rather to be superficial. However, as you watch these bombs drop, imagine that instead you view the Cambodian population as being, as evincing civility, refinement, moral sensibility, rationality, logic, and maturity, if we're going for the human uniqueness continuum at the top. Likewise, as these bombs drop, have in your mind that these Cambodians are emotionally responsive, have interpersonal warmth, evince cognitive openness, and agency and individuality and depth. Imagine having in your mind these characteristics of human nature and human uniqueness as these bombs drop. Again, emotional responsiveness, interpersonal warmth. We will bring this, you can tell I'm doing this as we go. So look, the bombs are dropping and I'm going to read off the aspects of human uniqueness and human nature. So civility, refinement, moral sensibility, rationality and logic, and maturity. These are the characteristics of human uniqueness. The bombs are being dropped on these people with these characteristics of human uniqueness. Then, in terms of human nature, emotional responsiveness, interpersonal warmth, cognitive openness, agency and individuality, and depth. It makes it harder to see those bombs drop, knowing that these people have human nature and human uniqueness. All right. Good. So this shows that this exploration has, as an interpretive tool, awareness of how it becomes easier to do bad things to others, to harm others, where we have engaged in animalistic dehumanization and mechanistic dehumanization. And I have begun to talk about examples of that, especially by the British. I'm sorry to say I didn't set out on this journey to gather evidence against the British. Nevertheless, I'm reporting that I have observed in British leaders in these countries, Cambodia and Kuwait, evidence especially of childlikeness, animalistic dehumanization, using this chart from Nick Haslam. Okay, that's enough by way of introduction. We left off on in the last episode on an emotional note. I will say It is tough to engage in this testimony. Who knows what will happen? Nevertheless, I am not only motivated by what Fatima's testimony, the quote, this book from Hank, and the questions it raises about really how independent countries are, and this quote from J.D. Vance. So I am motivated, yes, by these individuals and their work. Furthermore, I am motivated because my perception is that what I've observed, those who commit these acts assume that they are committed in secret, and that because the workforce fears for their jobs, or consequences if they speak up within the countries where they're employed, that they might be deported or jailed or sued, that they have a pliant workforce who will not speak up. And as a result, atrocities have occurred. So I am taking the opposite view, and I am testing the strength of the oppression. It's this usual standard thing of, once you stand up to a bully, you will see how quickly they fold, right? So I am taking the opposite view and speaking very publicly about these matters, and we will see if justice follows. I think you may sense that justice is necessary, and it may be closer than we think, just through the power of speech. Good. So where did we stop? We stopped, with last time with my recollection of a man who hung himself on a gathering center in the North Kuwait asset. And as I sort of go through these episodes and commit these memories, to record, and after I stop recording, I remember further things. So what did I recall further after I stopped last time? So the man who hung himself on this pipe rack, I now recall that the Sunday when work began again, because the weekend in the Arab Peninsula is Friday and Saturday, so they started Sunday. So when they noticed this body hanging from the gathering center, they did, it has to be said, let workers, and there were thousands of them, choose to go home if they wanted to. Now, this is a key thing. Choose? I'm sorry. But imagine if this happened in Australia, somewhere in the so-called free world, of that Hank has described, with its liberal values, and that human life has the sanctity of human life, etc. Imagine if the management of the site with the hanging body on the goddamn factory that they were building had given the choice to workers to go home if they wanted to. I'm sorry, no. The entire work site should have been shut down and everybody should have been sent home. So some, like 1,000+ workers, did go home, but some stayed. And I was informed by 2 people at least that from some points at site, the body could be seen hanging by some people who chose to stay and continue working. It has to be said that a perimeter of roughly 200 to 300 meters, and I've heard 200 meters, and I heard 300 meters from the 2 people that I talked to. So between 200 and 300 meter perimeter was put up, was sort of established around the hanging body. Workers were not to go, closer than that. But it wasn't far enough away to stop some people from some points at the gathering center seeing the goddamn hanging body of this man who committed suicide on the facility that they were constructing. Seeing that body whilst they worked. So I don't know if this is some kind of sick, macabre punishment for those who disrespected a dead body enough not to choose to go home, right? And I can't even believe that those words have come out of my mouth, that this is not a movie, that this really happened. But so just to say that the mismanagement of circumstances by, yes, principally the British leadership, the British engineering leaders on this project, was so bad that it led to a man clearly making a statement about injustice somehow through choosing on the weekend to hang himself on the fucking facility they were building. But the managers further committed further gross acts of mismanagement were committed, such that the dead body was disrespected to the degree that all the workers were not sent home, and the perimeter that they established around the body until the police came that afternoon was insufficient to the degree that those who were left working could still, from some parts of that gathering center, see the fucking hanging body whilst they worked. And one of the surveyors that I spoke to, I remember it was in the hot heat, 40 degrees. I will never forget standing sweating out the front of the Altamir Annex office in the Al Ahmadi Governorate, where most of the office-based workers work. I will never forget this British surveyor joking, oh, you know, we weren't like, you know, banging into the hanging body, you know, dragging our head across the swinging feet or whatever, you know. He made this joke, you know. You know, heaven help that the laugh that I just made is misinterpreted or taken out of context there, but you know, excuse me for laughing, but what can I do? So he made this joke that, you know, they weren't, you know, brushing up against the hanging body, but, you know, that he did admit to me that he could still see it from where he was working. So this is where things got to. And you can understand why I am now speaking out. But of course, you know, it's probably all too late because it was 8 years ago, 2017. But what the hell, this is where we are. And I haven't seen anybody else speaking out. So I'm doing it. Who knows? You know, these are the effects of speaking up. Fatima, you know, bless her, through all of, you know, a much more high profile situation, and with the backing of an incredible a professional production team, delivered a searing testimony. As a result, partly because of that, I am motivated to speak up. Who knows, through me saying this in public, who knows who else is going to speak up? So, what else is to say? Let me check my little agenda. Suicides, no workplace safety, my resignation, the stock price, and the poem. So I think we've covered the suicides, right? I can't believe that phrase has come out of my goddamn mouth. But we're into the no workplace safety issue. And I think I already said that hanging body was also classified as not being a workplace incident. You know, I mean, it's just appalling. There was another thing related to one of these North Kuwait asset gathering center projects, another safety incident involving a death, which was also classified as not being a workplace incident. Now, it first sort of came to my attention, you know, there's a lack of awareness that I had working in the office all the time about really the shit show that was how these construction projects were managed at site. So how I first became aware of the next fucking atrocity was that the plotter, which is one of these really large format printers that can print out, you know, massive sort of A0 size maps. We're talking a meter high by, you know, 800 millimeters wide, right? Massive plotter. So I just noticed that one day it started to start printing posters about driver safety all day, every day, And it went on for at least a week. Now, these plotters, you know, at least the one that we had, was pretty slow. And again, one of the older, so I'm talking 60 plus, British engineering managers had chosen to do, and he was my line manager, by the way, was to start printing, as I said, printing off all of these really big posters about you know, awareness to do with driving. And as you're already aware, you know, driver safety and traffic fatalities are common, and driver safety is appallingly bad in Kuwait. But why was someone managing several construction projects for the Kuwait Oil Company suddenly printing off these posters? Well, I came to understand. So as I've said a few times in these episodes, after I stopped recording, I remember further details of the story. And it just so happens that I recorded a bunch of videos when I went to site to try to understand the circumstances of this traffic fatality. And I uploaded 8 years ago now to YouTube a video with, and it's very awkwardly edited, it's very slapdash, but what I discovered at site. So I'm just going to splice this into this overall episode, and I'll also read out the first slide. Two gentlemen were driving nearby Gathering Center 31, had a crash, and one died. There were conflicting stories about the case, but it occurred on a dirt road outside of the GC 31 site. Furthermore, it is outside the North Kuwait asset fence to the south. The Amec Foster Wheeler safety supervisor remarked that one of the stories was that the gentlemen were sent by an engineer from the contractor Dodzil using the car to retrieve someone from the GC 31 security gate 5 kilometers from site near the main road. The second story was that they were out for a joyride. Regardless, one was a member of catering staff and the other a labourer. Neither were engineers, and the vehicle was formally assigned to neither of them. Furthermore, the Amec Foster Wheeler safety supervisor informed that the speed, location, and other logging data from the vehicle was not made available to him when it was requested. He remarked that the accident occurred during work hours on a track used by workers to get to the GC31 site. Therefore, it is surprising the case was not reported as a lost time injury, or LTI, by the client, the Kuwait Oil Company. I'll now leave the rest of the video to run and then come back to the narration.
Right? That's right, I just watched it. Alright. Okay, so we're sitting in a Mustang. It's not a work car, it's a rental Mustang. We have just exited Highway 80 and we're going towards GC31. Basically, the point of this exercise is to demonstrate, or actually to investigate, if the gate into GC31 is something that the public can drive through in a car which is not approved for going in the oil field. I happen to have a Kuwaiti friend with me, a Aasra.
What's the view?
The reason we're doing this is that there was a crash within the past few months of a couple of guys driving a vehicle in the oil field from GC31 back to the gate on a dirt road to pick someone up at the gate. One of them died, and the crash was considered or declared by the Kuwait Oil Company as not being work related because it was outside of the boundary of GC31. I guess the point for me of doing this is to show that, sure, they were outside of GC31, but they were on a road that was built for the purposes of constructing GC31, and we're about to test if we, as the public... It's recording?
Yes.
Okay, so it's very clear we are now going off-road in our non-oil field vehicle, a Mustang GT convertible, just to make the point. It's doubtful that anyone amongst the public would want to come along this road. It's trafficked, as you can see up here, by work vehicles. This being a Nissan Navara Ute, and this being a truck that says gas chem oxygen on the side. This is not what you usually see driving around in the city. So I just wanted to make the point that, yeah. Okay, I'm done. The reason for this video is we're on the approach now to the gate to GC31 that I'm told these two individuals were driving their car to from the other side. So up ahead, you can see a circular green fence and what definitely looks like the entrance to a oil field construction site or facility. Again, further evidence that if something occurred on the other side of that fence, it was within a workplace. So we will continue now. Have all the evidence we need, to be honest.
I'm recording.
Alright, so we're approaching the gate now. There is a big boom gate at the gate. By the way, this is a Dodsel project. There was a sign saying it's Dodsel back there.
Oh, sorry, I'm doing too much.
And we're going to have to stop here because I can see... Alright, so we went through the first security gate for GC31. The security guards confirmed that it's for GC31, but they said the public can come through here. We cannot go inside the GC31 fence, however, so that's 5 kilometers away on this dirt road, which seems to have been built specifically for the GC31 construction site. And they said that it's fine to take photographs, so we are taking a video, and I've got the 360 camera going. But yeah, it's clear that this is used by work vehicles only. There's not a public thoroughfare. It doesn't go anywhere else useful than GC31. So yes, I guess technically you could say that it did occur on public land because we are ostensibly, to those security guards, members of the public. I didn't show them my my KSC gate pass. So yeah. Get that sound.
Okay, hold on, that's the contract. That's the project name. Okay.
Alright, so we can say that we've been to the gate. We've travelled the 5 kilometre road from the public gate along the public road, technically, to GC31, and we've stopped and turned around. Now we're driving along the fence next to GC31 because we can't go in there. Well, I could walk in there because I have a gate pass, but we can't go in there with this car. Okay, so we're approximately 1.5 kilometres from GC31, which, according to Willard Stevenson, the head of safety for major projects for Amec Foster Wheeler, that's his approximate job title. At least he's the one that covers all these safety cases, and he's the one that all the other safety engineers seem to be reporting to. He said that the crash site was 1.5 kilometres from GC31. We are now 1.5 kilometres from GC31, and it is completely flat. There are no speed bumps. There are no holes in the road. It's a straight road. So, yeah. It's a strange place to have a crash where you die. Anyway. The 1.5 kilometres from the gate of GC31, and we spotted the only really credible damage to the road that they could have tried to avoid if they didn't want to have a crash. It's here. So there's a pronounced ridge. There's a pothole here. There's a ridge here. Another pothole here. And if they tried to miss that,
deal with some extra context here, I think spatially, I have, of course, prepared a map for you guys. So I'll share my screen and we'll have a look at Google Earth Engine. I mentioned Highway 80. That's it going up here, north-south. It will go up to the Iraq border there. Driven there a few times on sightseeing visits myself. And you can see there's a farming area on the border outside of the North Kuwait asset. And you can see in the imagery, actually, the fenced area of the North Kuwait asset. Why is it darker inside? Well, funnily enough, more vegetation grows inside of the oil field than out, because anyone can drive around with their camels or quad bikes or SUVs or whatever and destroy the vegetation. But inside, there's actually less traffic and people driving around willy-nilly. So there's more vegetation, and therefore you see it in the image with this nicely defined fence. What we can also see, and this is a 2016 image, I picked that one only because it offers the most definition or the most contrast. You can see this splodge down here, which is outside the fence, as I've said in the earlier narration. And this is the Gathering Center 31 site. So you might have got confused about what was going on. So what we did was we drove up Highway 80, and then we turned off the road and went here. And if I turn off all layers and you just get the imagery, you can see quite clearly in the sand there's a graded track. And then quite soon you get to this strange circular area with a couple of gates and a fence across. And, you know, it's a bit of a strange, I'll be honest, I've never seen it anywhere else. It's really a strange situation. So we were in actually 2017 there. We go back to 2016, it's still there. We go back to 2011, it's completely bare desert. You know, you've got a few tracks for the Bedouins to herd their camels. You really don't see much going back even to the mid-1990s, or at least earlier than the 2000s here. Okay, so let's go up to 2016. It's still there. 2017, there's a few graders there showing that they've maintained this patch of dirt for some reason. 2018, it's still there. 2019, it's still there. It seems to be deteriorating now. The sheds are gone. 2021. 2023, it's almost no evidence. You would be wondering what it was if that's all you had. All right, so let's go back to 2016 and we'll follow this track along. So 2016 was one of the years when I was there. It was a year before we drove there and did this little investigation. So I'm driving along the track. I'm continuing on. Oh, and here we have the beginnings of, as I said, a gathering center. And if we turn on everything, we can see some place marks that Google themselves have put in, and it says Amec PMC, or Amec Project Management Consultancy Office, and a Dudsel office, as I related to you before. And you will remember that there was a sign at the edge of the fence. It appears to be this one. You can see the shadow and everything, telling people what, or maybe it was here, I'm not sure, might have been there, saying what the details of the contract were. And you could certainly see Dodsel on the sign. So, okay, I hope this is all sort of matching up for you guys. Now, what I said, or sort of repeating what the senior safety engineer told me, was that the incident occurred on, as you can see, basically dead straight road. Yes, there's a bend there, and then it goes dead straight. There's a bend, a couple of bends here. But overall, it doesn't seem to be a risky proposition to drive one's vehicle along this dead, flat, graded road. And you saw in the video from when we went to site, to the location, 1.5 kilometers from the GC31 fence or gate, so around here, that the only evidence we saw of something that could give someone something to avoid on the road and maybe resulting in a rolling over was a very small, pothole, really, in the road. I wouldn't even call it that. So it's, as I said, 8 years ago when that was recorded, and I still have difficulty understanding now how on earth someone could have died. But if we just grab the measuring tool, which I think we have in Google Earth here, can we do some measuring? Here we go. Here's the measuring tool. I don't know exactly where. Here we go. That's going to be the gate. So let's start our measuring tool and start digitizing. So that is 250 meters or so. We're digitizing within the track. We want 1.5 kilometers. So where are we at? We're at 1.3. We're at, there we go, 1. Go back a bit further. There we go. Oh, roughly. Okay, 1.5 kilometers. That's it. Can I kill off these extra digitized ones? There we go. Select those vertices. All right, so that is the 1.5 kilometer mark. It is not at a bend. It is literally there that either because they were assigned an errand by an engineer from GC31 or because they went on a joyride, either of these is objectionable circumstances for a fatal crash to occur. But it just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's hard to see anything in the imagery. If we go to the 2017 image, funnily enough, there's a truck there. But there's just, so you can see in the satellite imagery, it's inexplicable that a death could happen. And it's got issues written all over it, both if you take the perspective, because as I said, there were two competing stories. If it was a engineer assigning, for heaven's sake, a catering staff person and some construction worker an errand to go to this gate, the one with the big circle that was sent there apparently in the one telling of the story, then it's a breach, as far as I understand it, to give someone your own vehicle and send them off on this errand. And if that was the story, then I'm sorry, but that's got workplace incident written all over it, because it was someone from the site telling them to go to this first gate, which I struggle to understand why it should exist, to pick someone up. That there is no question that that's a workplace incident. It doesn't matter that it happened outside of the fence just across this little stretch of desert here. It doesn't matter because this is a gathering center that is serving this oil field. And the fact that, it could even be entertained that this should be dismissed as a workplace incident, if it was an errand, is laughable. But if it was two men joyriding, then this is still a shocking workplace incident, because they were using a company vehicle. It occurred on company time. They were workers at this facility, and they were using an engineer's car who was working at the facility. So I'm sorry, it is eye-wateringly disingenuous to, even if they were joyriding, cast this as not being a workplace incident. Because if they did, and there were all the subsequent investigations and examinations of safety policy and training that kind of a declaration would elicit, then the running of the workplace would have been improved such that there was a much lower chance of joyriding, for heaven's sake, happening on company time in company vehicles. But so either way, in either telling, it doesn't pass muster as not being a workplace incident. What is more, as I related introducing this story, John Lambert, this very senior, older, distinguished engineering gentleman, if I can put it that way, distinguished, I don't know, from the UK, he responded as though it was a workplace incident, by spending a week abusing the plotter and all staff sitting around this noisy thing for a week to print out all of these posters for all of the Amec Foster Wheeler officers across the country to remind them about driver safety. So if it wasn't a workplace incident, this traffic or road fatality, then why on earth did John Lambert spend all this time and effort and money printing out all of these posters to remind people about driver safety? I'm sorry, but his action also endorses that it in fact was a workplace lost time incident, because he is using the workplace and its resources to respond to that incident. So back to my original narration. And as a result, this line manager, this supposedly respected engineering leader, an older gentleman in his 60s, chose to spend more than a week running the plotter all day, every day, printing off safety posters about driving. Very interesting. A very interesting collection of events. This all happened at Amec Foster Wheeler, at the time a top 5 global engineering design firm, celebrated by the Kuwait oil company as being the best project management consultancy amongst the 4. So I'm recording another intervention here because, as I said, literally as I go through, all the memories come flooding back to me. So another one is that there's its open data similar to Google Street View platform called Mapillary. I'm going to share my screen now and show you a recording that we put into Mapillary from this trip going to GC31. Now you can see in the video I mentioned that we had a convertible Mustang GT. Well, here is the 360 camera suction capped to the windshield, and in that particular photo you can't see me, but that would be me there, and NASA would be sitting there, and you can see it's this convertible. We had a lot of fun. So yeah, I wish I'd gone through my whole life with this kind of evidence gathering. But what Mapillary allows us to see is that, yes, indeed, we did. And you can see that it's under the Take the Bus KW account, which is relating to a public transport advocacy campaign that I did with a bunch of guys outside of work in 2016, 2017. There was a bus route going all the way to the Iraq border, which we were getting spherical imagery along, and I killed 2 birds with 1 stone, getting the imagery for that route along with going on this little trip. So yeah, this is my coverage, as you can see with the toggle here. And you can see we went to GC31. This is an old image in Mapillary from Esri, so they don't have it. But you can see you will recall from the Google Earth map that the route is the same. Oh. Yeah, I really hate this interface from Mapillary. Anyway, so let's zoom in and try and pick up that route again. There we go. All right. So the cool thing about Mapillary is that you can play a route. So what's happening here is it is taking us all the way along the track. And I'm going to pause. Now recall that there was this entrance to the strange non-gate here, this desert crop circle of a gate situation. And you can see, unfortunately, I think I feared that we might be busted so I didn't have the camera going as we went through this gate. But the first image, you can see, here we are. I turned it on cheekily. All right, so it says Dodzil. Here is one of the workers. The mapillary algorithm has happily blurred out their faces. No issues with that. We had a truck behind us. There was one of the dogs. Oh, there are stories about those dogs. Apparently, there were some North Korean workers at this site, and there were stories about those dogs, the population of the dogs reducing, if I can put it that way, which sounds like a horrible thing to say, but, you know, what can I say? This is what was reported to me. And there we are leaving this non-gate. And you can see the fence, yeah, around it. So this big peripheral fence, along with this track here, basically stopped you going around, although you can see there was a track doing just that, going around. And the first time we approached, we actually went around this because I sort of, you know, I was a bit doubtful about this whole situation. No one had told me about it. And I drove around it. And then I realized, you know, that maybe we should, you know, I can't remember why, but I sort of basically got some courage up, drove back, and then drove around here and found that, you know, they put themselves forward to me as being largely harmless. So let's play this video and hopefully the spherical image. Yeah, it's a bit okay. Well, I'm fighting it to make it continue looking straight ahead. But this is, it offers an interesting view, perhaps. It is horrific how it goes between these images. Doesn't know where forward is. Anyway, so all I can sort of eyeball is it literally was halfway down, and that's not where we're at yet. I'm going to push the imagery along, and I'm going to take us to halfway there. Good. So, oops. Oh, it's continued playing. All right, so let's look at the images halfway down. Again, the source of the crash was clearly not the road. And I'll just play through all of them. You know, I think this here is the porthole-ish thing that I showed in the YouTube video. Yeah? So that must have been literally the halfway point, or the 1.5 kilometer point, which was halfway. Slow down, a sign. All right, great. So who knows? Maybe one of them was looking at his phone. Maybe he tried to avoid an oncoming car. Maybe they didn't know how to drive and they were on a. Who knows? Who knows? All of those ideas, though, have no bearing on, as I keep saying, this being a workplace incident. Workplace vehicle during work hours. They were working at site. The only reason they were there was because they were working on GC31. They were either permitted by someone to use their vehicle or they nicked it. These are all things about workplace safety being mismanaged, or they were sent there. I'm going to stop repeating it because I've done it ad nauseum. I guess one final thing to say that I didn't say in my initial sort of observations is that literally this road does not exist. So they're all off. So there is no evidence whatsoever of this track in earlier imagery. 2016 is when it appears. Sadly, the last image is 2011 in Google Earth, and I'm not going to bother to go. But the point is that, yes, it was outside of the oil field fence, but there's no evidence of this road before. This is a 2012, 2013, 2014, no evidence, 2016. Do I have to go in a bit to trigger it to load? Okay. The interface is a bit finicky. But yeah, the point is that when we have evidence of the beginnings of this site, we have evidence of the track. Without the site, we ain't got the track. So yeah, it might have been outside of the oil field fence, but it's clearly related to work, to do with the Kuwait Oil Company.